Why Your Kids' Teachers Are So Stressed Out by Mr. B. And folks, as I narrate through this, feel free to pause if you want to read any of the pictures. All right, here we go. You're a teacher. Could be high school, middle school, let's say elementary school. At least you used to think of yourself as a teacher. Really, you're more like a babysitter. All day long, you try to deal with the same behavior issues from the same one or two students. And lately, it's gotten out of control. You spend 95% of your time and energy trying to calm down these two students, which leaves no time to teach, let alone help the entire rest of the class. As a teacher, you know you can handle basic issues like blurting, classroom drama, playground roughhousing, but you're dealing with temper tantrums and meltdowns all day long. Tantrums can last hours. Punching, kicking, screaming, biting, throwing things, endless crying when they don't get their way, pathological lying, especially when explaining things to parents. This continues all day. But this isn't just your class. All over the US, there are students that desperately need interventions, counseling, therapy, and real options for possible alternative education settings. The documentation process for getting extra help can take years and is so long and grueling that many teachers are reluctant to start it. If the student moves, the process might start over. And if you finally get some interventions, they might be worthless, as the students' behaviors have now escalated so much that it's essentially a Band-Aid on an artery wound. Your superintendent has followed other districts by eliminating any consequences. What would have gotten a student expelled 10 years ago won't even get a suspension now. The district admin want high test scores, no suspensions, no office referrals, no matter the cost. Like most teachers, you know suspensions, expulsions, and endless trips to the office don't change behavior, but you literally can't do your job while these behaviors happen all day. You can't teach, kids don't learn. The district reasons that every second a student is out of the class, they're not learning. But nobody is learning because all your time goes to two students. Same is true for K-12 classes all over. These daily behavior issues from a few students take up all staff members' time. The principal, assistant principal, EAs or paraprofessionals, equity specialists, librarian, behavior coach, school social worker, even the front secretary, all can be called to deal with the same few students, often several times a day or all day long. District admin are forcing schools to essentially fudge office referrals and suspension numbers. Because behavior issues are kept in the class or hallway, admin can show data that proves their strategies are working. It's all a lie. Behaviors skyrocket, even with students who weren't an issue before. It's understandable, as you have a Lord of the Flies scenario where the teacher is so occupied that the rest of the class is pretty much on its own. Though there are plenty of classes in your school or district that run just fine, it's all just become a roll of the dice. The easiest class can self-destruct with the addition of one student with major behavior issues. You and your fellow teachers feel like you have no control, and realistically, you don't. You have no say in district policies. More troubling is that students eventually learn that there are no repercussions for anything they do. The vast majority of students listen, but even their patience is almost gone. Over the years, teachers watch as a few students' behaviors get worse and worse. Temper tantrums turn to violence and threats against students and staff, but still no office referrals or suspensions. The toll this has taken on staff and students is unbelievable. Kids don't want to go to school, and neither do teachers. We often hear about the school-to-prison pipeline. But when school is unsafe and kids can't learn, can we talk about the prison-to-prison pipeline? When school feels like a prison, what's the difference? Schools may feel like a prison, but they also operate as test score factories. Those who control what's on standardized tests have control of what's taught in the curriculum. All or any learning is second to the almighty test score data. If test scores in your class are up, you're a good teacher. If not, you're failing the kids. No excuses. District policy cannot be questioned. But keep in mind, the district loves you and is here to help you figure out why you're failing the kids. Don't fight the district. Resistance is futile. To help address your failures, the district will require double the weekly test prepping data to make sure your class is on target for the next standardized tests. Teachers with low test scores now have even less time to teach new or any material at all. They can hardly finish this week's testing, let alone have time to teach. With almost no time to teach, all creativity and fun are stripped from lesson plans as you focus on the exact skills needed for the test. Obviously, the drill and kill teaching creates even more behavior issues, and the district admin will, without the slightest sense of hypocrisy, call you out for not having lesson plans that are creative, fun, and engaging. You can't make this stuff up. If a teacher somehow manages to really raise test scores, then that just proves that the superintendent's plan is working. If not, it just proves that the teachers need training to address their prejudiced beliefs and their commitment to educating all. Heads they win, tails everyone loses. The superintendent has a grand vision for the district. Rest assured, all staff members will have an equal voice and opportunity to agree with why the superintendent's plan will work. For urban districts especially, this grand vision often only lasts 2 to 3 years before the superintendent runs to the wealthy suburban districts with a polished resume that maybe shows test scores in former district kinda up, but suspension rates definitely down. The school board quickly hires a new cookie-cutter superintendent with another fail-proof vision to raise test scores and lower suspension rates. Here's a question: how do you lower suspensions below 0? Suburban superintendents can also polish resumes with 2 to 3 years of experience in an urban district before they move to a state-level position or a high-paying education company. The white savior complex of rescuing urban schools from their teachers sits well with the school board. Free market corporate efficiency will bring the success of the suburbs to our schools. Until it inevitably doesn't work, the district is worse off, endless teachers have quit, and the super has already left. Interestingly, the same things are happening at private schools and charter schools, which need to prove their test score performance to draw in more students. These alternatives to public schools can be far bigger test factories with even less accountability because they need funding from higher student numbers, but also can't afford to lose any students. Thus, there might be even less accountability for behavior issues. The more teachers you talk to, the more you realize that this is happening all over. Teacher bashing, test score shaming, no accountability or options for behaviors, and no accountability for district admin and the cronies and puppets below them. Though less obvious in the suburbs, these issues are getting worse and expanding everywhere. In the news, parents are presented an image of lazy union teachers who can never be fired, lounging in the summer sun. They react by hiring/voting in school board members who in turn hire a new superintendent who will whip the teachers into shape with higher test scores and lower, no suspensions or office referrals. Yet interestingly, most parents and guardians like their kid's teacher and like their kid's school, but there's something about the teachers as a whole that can't be trusted. Some parents are aware and concerned about the amount of testing, yet there's still an unchallenged faith in the scores themselves. Parents are taught that good schools have high test scores and thus good teachers. Bad schools are easily blamed on the teachers, or, especially with urban schools, blamed on the students. District admin, their vision, and the school board are presented as liberators who hold the teachers in check. But what if the parents were told about what was happening in their kids' school? What if these elephants in the room that we only discuss in hushed voices in the teacher's lounge, what if we got the message out to parents about how bad it's gotten? Unfortunately, the truth is buried in a grave of fear, lies, mistreatment, trauma, and finally, a surrender. Teachers are quitting at alarming rates. There's no need to fire us over test scores. The average teacher lasts about 4 years, and what is supposed to be a career you retire in after 30 years. Consider how many quit the first year. Student teaching dropouts aren't even counted. If they were, who knows how low the average would drop. As veteran teachers quit out of disgust and stress, they take with them the story and history of the district. Parents and newly hired teachers forget that there was a time when schools weren't test factories. It's become so widespread that it's become the norm. Young and new teachers have often known nothing but this current system in their own K-12 experience. Obsessive test prepping and room clearings from extreme behaviors were a daily occurrence in these new teachers' own education. Many new teachers don't even know there's a problem until they get their first job. Maybe they've heard from a veteran teacher about a time before this chaos, but a so-called veteran teacher might be anyone who's been there more than 2 to 3 years. The history is lost and the present is the norm. So year after year, teachers watch as the same issues get worse and worse. Test score demands keep going up. Behavior issues keep getting worse. There's no accountability or help, and teachers are blamed for everything. And so we teachers, staff ask ourselves, why am I here? Why do this job? Why be a teacher if I can't teach? All it takes is one student with extreme behaviors to turn my job into a babysitter all year. What's the point? The more questions you ask, the more you realize you don't have an answer for continuing this job. You're passionate about teaching, but you never get to teach. The toll that the job is taking on your health is affecting everyone around you. It affects parenting, relationships, friends, and even your ability to sleep, relax, and not think about school. The district offers some teacher yoga classes and de-stressing seminars, but you're not stressed because you haven't done enough downward dog. It's the district that is causing the stress. Finally, after much talks with friends and family, you realize you need to quit the teaching profession. Another teacher bites the dust, only to be replaced by a new teacher. That won't last much longer than you. Sure enough, you find yourself months later with a new job, pumping out spreadsheets in a cubicle in corporate America. It's not your dream job, but the pay and hours are better, nobody's throwing a chair at you, and sure enough, and this is actually true, you work with many ex-teachers, all with the same stories of mistreatment that you went through. Interestingly, you find that ex-teachers are in high demand all over for their work ethic, organizational skills, and oddly, their skills with data from all those years of endlessly interpreting test score data. A terrible irony that's not lost on fellow ex-teachers. But at night, you lie awake in bed, wondering, what went wrong? This isn't how I pictured my life. And though you're still passionate about the teaching profession, like so many former teachers, you wouldn't dare come back. But you still wonder, what could I have done different? You honestly can't think of anything, but the thought still haunts you. You inevitably ask, was the district right? Am I not meant to be a teacher? Did I fail my students? Is this all my fault? For current and former teachers all over, the answer is no. It is not your fault. You were placed in an environment that made it impossible to do your job. For too long, our teacher stories and struggles have remained in the teacher's lounge, hidden from parents. My hope is this video will expose what has been done to us and how it affects your own kids. My name is Mr. B, current and continuing kindergarten teacher, and I'd like to welcome you to my video. First off, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this. I know it's long, but I tried to make it as entertaining as I could, while still hard-hitting. A little about the format. You've probably noticed the contrast between the gloom and doom narrating and the funny pictures and pop culture references. That's on purpose. I need parents to understand the depth of the problems we're facing, but I don't want you to cry after every chapter. The subject matter of mistreatment and abuse is not fun, but like a rose growing out of concrete, I think the pictures will lighten the mood and make it an easy watch. Now, a good question is, Mr. B, why make this? Truth be told, with how bad things have gotten, I never felt like I had a choice, but my reasons actually relate to my teacher story. So I went back to school later in life to become a teacher. While taking college classes at night, during the day, I was a substitute teacher from multiple districts, rural, urban, suburban. I taught every grade, took every position available. And what was interesting was wherever I went, teachers were dealing with the same struggles. The kindergarten teachers had the same issues as the high school teachers. Teacher bashing, test score shaming, no accountability for extreme behaviors, no options for dealing with behaviors, and time again, there was a district administration that just didn't care about what teachers were dealing with. Since teaching full-time, I have watched things get worse and worse over the last 10 years. Veteran teachers all over can confirm that this is especially true when it comes to behaviors from a small percentage of students. School boards have continued to hire enforcer superintendents whose policies destroy entire districts within a year or so, all in the name of saving the district from its teachers. What's shocking is not just how widespread this is, but how many parents don't realize this is happening in their own district. But honestly, how would parents even know? Admin paint a pretty picture of everything going so well. Meanwhile, teachers are quitting at such high rates that we're losing anyone who is willing or able to tell our story. It's for this reason I'm telling our story. Parents need to know what has happened and how it has happened. I can promise you this is not a book report in any way. It's also not a perfect roadmap to change with absolute solutions to all of our problems. Rather, in explaining to parents what's gone wrong, I'm hoping parents can join us and try to find a way to change this seemingly impossible situation. Having said that, welcome to the struggle. Glad to have you along. Now, a couple of things to acknowledge before we hop into the chapters. Yes, I'm reading from a script because if I don't, I'll go off on 1,000 tangents. Trust me, you don't want this. Also, a quick tip that you can listen to this like an audiobook if you want. You'll miss the pictures, but the message is still there. Now, an important message to any parents watching this who have had kids with behavior issues, big or small, at school or home. We teachers are not against you, and I promise this video is not meant to demonize you. There are so many fantastic parents out there who just simply have a kid that is more difficult to raise. These are parents who at home have structure, rules, routines, discipline, parents who love their kids to death and would do anything for them. These parents are not in denial of what is going on at school, but are often shocked at how much their kids' behaviors have skyrocketed at school. These parents get phone call after phone call from the school about behavior, and every day they talk to their kid. But it's like as soon as their kid is at school, it's like a free-for-all. Their kid is no angel at home, but they don't understand, rightfully, how it's getting so out of control at school. To these parents, I swear on my teacher's license that we teachers feel for you, as we are in the same impossible situation, and I hope this video will explain how few options we have so you can join our call for change, as opposed to the district just blaming us for everything. A note on terminology. I'm using the term district admin loosely. I don't just mean the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and assistant to the assistant superintendent, but also their entourage of district cronies, puppets, henchmen, and underlings that continue to drink the cult Kool-Aid even when they themselves are being hurt by district policy. Now, though I'm having fun with the pictures, it's important to note that not all district admin are like James Bond villains. There are many admin who truly stick up for their staff and students, but also fight back against hurtful policies. For those of you who do the right thing, please know this video is not about you. But this isn't the case of a few bad eggs in a few districts. I wouldn't have made this video if this was only for a few districts. This is spreading everywhere, and I want to challenge many parents and even teachers who might say, Mr. B, I feel for these other districts, but I don't think this applies to my kid's school. To which I ask, how do you know that? Really think about how much you actually know about what is happening in your school district, because there are endless teachers and ex-teachers who thought their district was just fine. Then things fell apart. A theme throughout this video is how hard it is for parents and even teachers to really get to the truth about what is happening. There's no Scooby-Doo mystery to be solved by looking for smoking gun statements in a random superintendent speech or district update. The truth hits staff members like a ton of bricks, behind closed doors, when we're at our most vulnerable, desperately trying to get help for a student, only to watch admin blame you right off the issue completely while smiling in your face and telling you they're there to help you. In these moments, staff realize that admin not only don't care about you, but will throw you under the bus and blame you for everything, knowing that you have no way of fighting back or repeating this to parents. These aren't one-time events, but rather countless episodes that can happen even in the wealthiest of suburbs, where no one would ever think that this could happen in Pleasantville. This is true for public, private, and charter schools alike. We all have a responsibility to make sure our teachers can actually teach and students can actually learn. I hope this video will help parents fight for us, because the things stressing out your kid's teacher are affecting your kid just as much. Having said this, let's review chapter titles before diving in. I tried to give them epic sounding names to be more memorable. Chapter 1, From Schools to Test Score Factories, the never-ending pursuit of test scores. Chapter 2, Plucking a bird's feathers, then blaming it for not flying, the impossible challenge for staff to deal with extreme behavior issues. Chapter 3, The Misuse of Social Justice and the Great Divide. Chapter 4, The Superintendent, the School Board, and the Unheard Voices and Stories. Chapter 5, College Education Programs and the Normalization of the Usual. Chapter 6, The Nightmare Parent Who is Created by This Education System. Chapter 7, Planting Seeds of Change, the Long-Term Struggle for the Heart of Education. And with that, let's get started. Chapter 1, From Schools to Test Factories, the Never-Ending Pursuit of Test Scores. Most parents are aware that there's too much testing going on in schools, but what's less known and more controversial is what is actually being tested and how much weight is given to the testing of trivial skills that eat up most of class time. Let's have a look by examining my grade, the best grade, kindergarten. You look at this word and recognize it's the word the, but how do you know it's the word the? Well, you recognize the letters, T, H, E, in that order. I promise this is going somewhere. So kids learn letter names so they can recognize words by the letters in them. We can also say that the quicker you recognize letters in a word, the easier it is to recognize the word. Accuracy and speed matter. Nothing controversial so far, but here's a question. How much speed should be expected of a 5-year-old? This is a common assessment or test you'll see in kindergarten where the student names as many letters in a minute as they can. Please note, folks, that testing in itself is not a bad thing. Testing/assessing tells us what a student knows and what they still need to learn. When you read with your kid at home and make note of words they miss so you can practice later, that's a good assessment. It really is just good teaching. But our expectations of performance can sabotage a test. Kindergartners are expected to get over 50 letter names in a minute, which will require practicing speed all year long. To get students ready for state standardized tests in later grades, district admin can choose what tests to use for prepping, and more so can manipulate expectations of how high test scores should be. If every kindergartner is expected to name over 50 letter names in a minute by the end of the year, the teachers will have no choice but to spend long amounts of time just test prepping all year long. Teachers will give the same tests in the fall, winter, spring, and end of the year, each time with higher test score expectations from the district. More so, teachers will have to progress monitor any student not meeting district expectations. This basically means practicing the same test every week until the student is caught up. The specific nature of these tests and skills means that there really is no fun way to practice. To get over 50 letter names by the end of the year, when timed for 1 minute, a kindergartner basically has to practice speed with either flashcards or an actual test. Especially for academically struggling students, this can mean practicing several times a week all year long with 5-year-olds. Note so far that we've only been talking about one test in just one grade. There are endless examples in grades all over and plenty more kindergarten examples. Let's look at letter sounds now. A kindergartner doesn't recognize the word cat right away, so they blend the letter sounds together to say the word k-a-t, cat. Just like with letter names, speed and accuracy are important, and the same test can be used to see how many letter sounds they can get in a minute. Nothing controversial with this test so far. Enter district admin. Every kindergartner, 5-year-olds, are expected to do 45 letter sounds in a minute. Though not impossible, there's many kinders who will struggle because they just go at a slower pace, even though they know all their letter names and sounds. Regardless, a teacher will spend their whole year chasing whatever magical number the bar is set at. Admin will state that the testing and the high bar set for scores are only there to help teachers and students, but please believe that admin will come down hard on any school not meeting expectations. Interestingly, the outrageously high test score expectations that admin have cannot be questioned. Why? Because of the R word, a swear word for teachers that only big kids, district admin, get to use. What's this word? Research. Whatever decisions admin make are always backed by the research. When they do it, research supports it. Dissenting opinions are not backed by research. Admin decide what qualifies as credible research. You could be a 30-year veteran teacher and still have all your experience pushed aside while admin talk about an article they Googled last night that, of course, confirms what the district is doing. But rest assured, admin are quick to share the articles that confirm their beliefs. Read as much as you want, though, but you won't find any justification for demanding every kindergartner getting 45 letter sounds in a minute and over 50 letter names. So where do the magic numbers come from? The magic numbers often come out of nowhere because the bar set only needs to be higher than the last bar to be accepted under the usual banner of higher expectations. To be fair, admin can usually point to credible district data that shows older students struggling because of some of the skills they missed in earlier grades. Thus, admins say that focusing on these specific skills along with high expectations will surely solve the problem, except that you now have every grade dedicating all time and resources to teaching a few specific skills. School is now officially a test score factory. Any teacher's fun and engaging lesson plans will be sporadic at best, as teachers are in a never-ending horse race to show test score results, only to take the same test next month with the bar raised even higher. There's almost no fun way to practice or train for these tests. So it's basically drill and kill. For many parents, this isn't new, as they've heard about it plenty of times at home. By now, anyone can see what nonsense this all is. But let's show some examples of real nonsense. P, E, V, pev, t, of, tov, s, aj, saj. Welcome to nonsense words. That's the actual name. Admin expect every kindergartner to do at least 15 nonsense words in a minute. This is up from 12 last year. That's right, test score demands went up during a COVID year when half the year or more was on an iPad. Like letter names and sounds, nonsense words do actually have a point. Rather than having kids read easily recognizable words like mom, dad, cat, dog, nonsense words show if a student can sound out an unknown word. But the speed that students need to actually get over 15 nonsense words in a minute means they can't afford to make one mistake while they perfectly sound out words they've never heard before. 5-year-olds are doing this. Folks, rather than just considering how much practice and prepping a teacher would have to do for just this one test, let's also consider all the other subjects and lessons that aren't being taught throughout the year because of a lack of time. Though this video is focused on just kindergarten, particularly in my neck of the woods and my schools in district, the same obsessive test prepping is true for other grades, schools, and districts all over. The amount of damage that this does to students and teachers is almost as shocking as how easily admin continue to get away with it. But let's change gears here and see how this looks if we were to apply district admin tactics to, of all things, sports. Instead of Mr. B, I'm now Coach B. I coach your kid's team. Let's say soccer. The soccer club our team is in has Coach B using these new and innovative strategies where I record all sorts of data during practices, like how fast and far they kick the ball, how fast they run the 40, and many other skills. Each week, Coach B emails parents with updated data showing how much players have improved at these specific skills. The parents love it. But soon, actual games start, and the team is getting absolutely smoked. It's not just that they're losing, but they're not playing together as a team at all. Individually, they have a lot of skills, but those skills don't seem to be transferring to actual games. Coach B goes to the admin of the soccer club and explains that he spends all practice just trying to record data, but the team needs experience scrimmaging and practicing in real game situations. Admin won't budge an inch. They restate that the data is necessary to show growth, but they explain to Coach B without a hint of hypocrisy that they aren't forcing Coach B to scrimmage, but it's up to the coach to find time for this while balancing data collection. Sure enough, the season goes on and things get worse. The parents and players are mad and don't care about the data anymore. A few parents go to the soccer club's admin and are told that the system actually works. It's just Coach B's fault for not implementing it right. The season drags to an end, and Coach B quits in disgrace, having taken the blame for everything. But the story doesn't end there. The whole soccer club ends up folding as more teams experience the same problems. Players end up leaving for other clubs. But sure enough, this club's admin find it easy to get hired by another soccer club, as they can show all this positive data in their interview of how much improvement there was on individual skills. The record of their former club isn't even brought up in the interview, let alone statements from former coaches, players, and parents. History is forgotten, and with no consequences, it's just another round of musical chairs until admin leave to save another club/district. Let's shift our focus back to school expectations. There's nothing wrong with having high expectations for academics, as long as expectations are backed by new and innovative teaching methods that empower teachers and students. You can't just raise the bar for everything while demanding conformity and expect test scores to magically go up. I believe it was Einstein who defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over but expecting different results. In this sense, if schools are test factories, then admin buildings are loony bins. District admin know to never let the facts get in the way of the truth, and the truth is whatever admin want it to be. Reality itself is suspect, as the district knows that reality has a well-known teacher bias. Interestingly, parents too have a bias towards accepting reality. Parents can think of a million other things they'd rather have their kid learn in school than spending the year training to pump out 15 nonsense words in a minute. It's to admin's advantage that most parents don't know how much this testing is happening and how much weight it carries. This goes far beyond standardized tests. The curriculum itself has changed so much that kindergarten is teaching now what was taught in first grade about 10 years ago, and even what might have been taught in second grade 20 years ago. Introducing everything earlier doesn't actually increase learning in most cases. Consider the example of a parent who has high expectations for their 3-year-old to be riding a bike early. This parent decides that their kid will be riding without training wheels at age 4. So as soon as their kid turns 4, the parent takes off the training wheels for good. It's a disaster. The 4-year-old is just not ready. They're constantly falling, getting hurt, and not making any progress. The kid won't even go near a bike now, even when the parent finally agrees to put the training wheels back on. But the parent did have the best of intentions. But the best of intentions can, of course, have the worst results. Teachers even see this in our standards, which can be thought of as a guide for what each grade should teach. It's the reason I teach the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s with my kinders, as opposed to advanced calculus. Most states used to have their own state-specific standards for what's taught in each grade. Many states have adopted the Common Core standards, which aimed for a unification in standards. Without turning this into a book report, we can say that the Common Core had some successes, but one of the continued criticisms is it just brought the bar up in every grade and introduced everything earlier. The idea was, if everything was introduced earlier and systematically followed through, then students would be reading and doing other subjects at a college level by high school. But just like taking the training wheels off early, there's been the same issues, and the issues continue to build. Let's say you're a 5th grade teacher, and half your kids read at a 2nd grade level. You're spending the whole year trying to catch them up 3 whole grade levels, while still teaching and testing 5th grade material, which is actually more like 6th grade material of a few years ago. Good luck with that. By the way, middle and high school teachers can confirm it only gets worse as the years go on. This is true for all grades. From even the first day of kindergarten, you're in a race to catch up kids who are behind others while getting kids prepped for first grade. Every grade is treated like a prepping station for the next grade. More so, preschool through 2nd is treated as nothing but a training ground for state standardized tests that usually start in 3rd grade and go to 8th. 3rd grade teachers in particular get the honor of taking the blame for everything from birth to now, third grade, as their class takes state standardized tests that are so weighted that they even affect property value in local neighborhoods. Go to a realtor website. Wherever you're searching for homes, you can click on nearby schools to see their school rating. The ratings are almost exclusively based on one state standardized test for grades 3 through 8. A school could be filled with veteran teachers, yet the school's only rating is based on one test. And please believe that low school scores can depreciate property value, which creates incentive for school board members to find a no excuses superintendent who will get the test scores as high as countries like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, etc. Never mind the fact that these countries' success is because they do the exact opposite of us. They have less testing, less or no homework, better funding and teacher pay, more class options in later grades, more student choice, and more creative freedom and respect for teachers. Imagine that. Folks, I'm going to end this chapter by noting something we didn't even talk about. Behavior. With all the issues brought up, we've only been focusing on academics, which as you can see is hard enough. But what happens when you add in the major behavior issues that teachers all over have dealt with, often on a daily/hourly basis? We'll turn to this in our next chapter. Chapter 2, Plucking a Bird's Feathers, then Blaming it for Not Flying, the impossible challenge for staff to deal with extreme behavior issues. It's important to understand how few options teachers have for dealing with extreme behaviors. I'll emphasize the absurdity of the average teacher's situation with a fun example. Let's take LeBron James, arguably the world's greatest basketball player, but we'll put him on a football field. LeBron has to stop this running back from scoring a touchdown, but LeBron has to stick with basketball rules, meaning he cannot initiate any physical contact. But the running back can plow right through LeBron at any time using football rules. LeBron James is in an impossible situation. Doesn't matter how good he is. He doesn't have the tools to deal with this. You could add 2 more NBA players and it wouldn't make any difference. Most teachers don't have to imagine this absurdity because we've lived it or watched it. Imagine staff members with arms out, like on defense in basketball, trying to block a screaming student's punches, kicks, biting, and throwing, anything. This can go on forever, as there's only a few staff members with training to do a student hold or restraint, and those with the training are off, putting out other behavior fires in the building. What's more absurd than our lack of options are the ridiculous tools we're supposed to use, such as room clearings. A room clearing is exactly what it sounds like. The whole class clears the room while a student is having a meltdown. Teachers have to wait for a staff member to be in the room with the student, meaning you could wait 20 minutes for someone to have the time to come by. Meanwhile, the meltdown continues. Though a staff member, such as a behavior coach, will talk with the student to try to calm them down, the student realizes pretty quick that they can tear the entire room apart, piece by piece. It's hard to explain in words how much damage is done to not just the room, but the student's reputation and the image of the class and school as a safe space for the rest of the students. When the class can finally come back in the room, they'll almost certainly be the ones to have to clean up the mess. They'll find even their personal belongings ripped apart. Here's a question. Do you think the other students want to play with this student on the playground? Nope. The student is now a social pariah, outcasted from almost any group, which sure enough adds to the next meltdown. And so it continues. Day after day, the meltdowns get worse and the teacher and class go through the day, knowing that at any time this student can be set off, and all they can do is clear the room and let the student get it out of their system until the next meltdown comes. Einstein's definition of insanity applies here, but what's more disturbing is the amount of documentation a teacher goes through before they can even get a minute of scheduled help or an intervention of any kind. Let's consider if a public pool required years of documented proof that a kid cannot swim before the pool was allowed to give the kids swimming lessons or even allow a flotation device. The kid needs help now, not in a year, and it's not doing any good to just keep throwing your kid back in the pool and expecting them to figure it out. So it is with education. To To be clear, there's nothing wrong with teachers being required to document behavior, along with strategies we've tried. It is the law, but it's also meant to right a historical wrong, as too many students, particularly students of color, have been misdiagnosed with labels in special education settings that did major damage. Unfortunately, the pendulum has swung so far that the documentation process is a bigger nightmare than it would be to just skip it. The process could take so long that the student might not get services until next year or longer. Time is such a critical factor because if a school can figure out a way to have a paraprofessional work with a student with behavior issues right away, this student can show instant improvement. The key is to get the help right away before behavior issues skyrocket. This is why schools with good funding show less cracks. They deal with the same issues, yes, but that extra bit of funding for help is the difference often between a student learning or not learning how to manage in the class. When or if a student is approved for services, there's still the question of how much help can a 20-minute intervention be for a student having meltdowns all day. More alarming is that students with major behavior issue diagnoses are often crammed in one room together with the other most difficult students in the school. This still happens in so many schools, and it's a recipe for disaster. It's an impossible choice for the parent, too, who knows how bad it's going for their kid in class, but is rightfully so worried it will get much worse in a so-called behavior room. Though there are many schools with success stories on an individual basis, there are so many districts whose schools are in an impossible situation because of the policies enforced by their own district admin. I want to switch gears here and demonstrate how admin policies can sabotage almost any type of leadership in any school. Let's start by giving you a choice between two different bosses or principals. Boss A is more hands-off and will give you more space and creative control. But Boss A is not good with dealing with conflict or working with behaviors. Boss B is hands-on. Everything is by the book and read from the script. But Boss B will stick up for you and will not shy away from conflict. Who would you choose? Probably depends on your job. Many medical and tech people might need everything done by the book, so they prefer Boss A. Teachers will vary a lot too. Some might take Principal A because they need their freedom, while others want a Principal B, who they feel will stand up for them and help them with behavior. What I'd like to do now is show how district policies can make the choice of principals almost meaningless. Let's start with Principal A, who doesn't help as much with behavior, but you've got your freedom, which is vital to a school not being a test score factory. But here's the question: can you actually teach, or will you deal with behaviors all day long? It's another year, you roll the dice, and have a student with meltdowns several times a day. The teacher, Principal A, and supporting staff are spending huge amounts of time and energy calming the student down. All that hands-off freedom goes to one student. So no, you can't teach at all. Same scenario, but with Principal B, who wants academics by the script, but is better with getting help for behavior. What changes? More specifically, can you teach? Unfortunately, no. Consider what's been talked about this chapter. There's no effective options for extreme behaviors that dominate the whole school. Keep in mind that the school has endless behavior issues in all grades, most of which have continued since kindergarten. The sheer number of cases will overrun the principal and staff. It doesn't matter about reading from the script. You're not going to be teaching much anyways. But what about a Principal C? The best principal, years of experience, will fight back against district policies, cares deeply about staff and students, freedom for teachers, but won't do things like room clearings. Sounds great, right? Unfortunately, the same lack of options will overrun the principal's school. But even before that happens, this principal will feel the wrath of district admin. When a superintendent wants a principal gone, they will find a way. The musical chairs method is notorious, where the principal just keeps getting moved to new schools until they eventually quit. This actually happens. What's becoming more common is Principal D, the worst principal. Teacher bashing, test score shaming, you name it. Room clearings won't even happen, as Principal D demands the teacher rebuilds the relationship by apologizing to a student who has been ripping the whole room apart for 20 minutes. Sorry, little Johnny, it was my fault that something didn't go your way. And folks, please believe Principal D drinks the district called Kool-Aid, and please believe Principal D is rewarded for their loyalty. Regardless of principal type, staff and students suffer the same consequences. Parents may be shocked that they haven't heard about all this, but realistically, how would you know, as the district can point to data that suspensions and office referrals are down? So apparently, behavior isn't an issue. But the true evil genius of admin can be seen in how they misuse terms like equity and social justice in order to silence any debate or opposition towards district policy. We'll talk more about this in our next chapter. Chapter 3, the misuse of social justice and the Great Divide. Because of our politically charged climate, this is going to be a difficult and controversial chapter. My goal is to show how terms like equity and social justice are being misused by many districts to further justify test score shaming and blaming teachers for all behavior issues. Before going on further, we need to talk about the Great Divide in our country and how it sidelines education issues. One thing most can agree with is that in the last 4 years, not only does it feel like we live in two different countries, but two different worlds and two different realities. Yet, regardless of political beliefs, when I explain what has been going on in schools, people across all walks of life are shocked and furious about what has been happening. The problem I have found time and time again is that people simplify education issues in order to justify their own political beliefs. Thus, people assume the answer to education issues, and really to everything, is to get their political tribe to win. This means choosing a tribe and destroying anyone who disagrees with you. Welcome to the Thunderdome. And so often we cater to the worst aspects of our tribe. Purity tests, inquisitions that rout out heresies, insane conspiracy theories, endless internet trolling, the list goes on. And as is usual, the voice and struggles of the average teacher is zoned out by political pundits, admin, and some academics. So many with little to no teaching experience, yet all claim to be fighting for the teachers by not listening. Folks, I could go on and on about this, but really what I'm asking you to do is keep an open mind about the direction of this chapter, and really the entire video, because we teachers can't afford to have our education issues marginalized into tribal categories. My intention is not to demonize the use of social justice as a lens for viewing education issues, nor do I want to chase away those worried about its use in school. My intention is to try to show how movements in education towards equity, equality, social justice, and anti-racism can be misused and warped into reinforcing the exact system they are supposed to be challenging. I want to further show how any movement can just as easily be warped when those in positions of power are untouchable, as will be detailed in our next chapter. What I ask is that we look beyond tribal politics and consider the bigger picture of how the education system reinforces itself. I want to position the misuse of social justice within the long-standing teacher accountability movement. To do this, let's roll back 20 years to the No Child Left Behind Act, passed in 2001. Interestingly, passed by both conservatives like George W. Bush and liberals like Ted Kennedy. This act really pushed standardized tests into hyperdrive, as so-called failing schools had to show major improvements in test scores, or inevitably risk closing. The act's name was brilliant in terms of propaganda. I mean, who would want to leave a child behind? But more so, it identified the problem/scapegoat, those lazy public teachers and their evil unions. Charter schools were viewed as the heroes that could pump out higher test scores and end the achievement gap. But the greater picture was that all teachers could not be trusted to raise scores and thus needed endless accountability measures to hold them to higher standards. So-called bad schools with bad teachers who brought low test scores were treated like an unprofitable business location that could be closed if profits/test scores didn't improve. Remember Coach B, endlessly collecting data at soccer practice. Same thing with teachers in so-called bad schools. Gradually, the public turned sour on how much testing was being done. Yet note that even today, the concern still is how much testing is done, not what is being tested. By 2015, public opinion had been swayed enough by testing horror stories of teachers that No Child Left Behind was effectively replaced, but its shadow lives on in current policies. Districts have been able to continue the same teacher bashing and test score shaming by positioning low test scores as a social justice issue, while completely ignoring the trivial and damaging nature of the tests. The game is the same, but the lingo has changed. With No Child Left Behind, it was bad test score equals bad teacher. Now it's bad test scores equals prejudiced teacher who's not teaching with equity and social justice in mind. Here's a question. What does pumping out 15 nonsense words in a minute have anything to do with social justice? Nothing, of course. If anything, these obsessive tests are a social justice issue as they destroy schools. Now we get into propaganda and data manipulation. Just like with Coach B's soccer team, admins state that these skills tested must be mastered, specifically to dismantle the achievement gap between white students and students of color. Thus, admin have a new role to make sure that there are no test score gaps between students. This is based mostly on race/ethnicity, but also on gender. Admin get to interpret test scores to see which teacher is failing which demographic group, then demand training to address failures. I want to pause briefly to note the hypocrisy in all this. Generally speaking, any movement concerned with equity, equality, or social justice would revolve around challenging oppressive systems. Yet, in the name of social justice, admin reinforce the same system that forces teachers to teach to the test all year long, while still getting after teachers for not having lesson plans that are fun, engaging, meaningful, culturally responsive, and so on. There's a paradox in all this that's best illustrated in an example. Let's say there's a 5th grade teacher who connects her class lessons to real-world issues that interest her kids. The kids and parents love it, and the kids are learning a lot. But all this time this teacher is spending being a good teacher is time not spent training for trivial skills on standardized tests. Though this teacher has very much taught with social justice in mind, her class scores are lower than others on state testing, even though the real learning in her class is far superior to others. Sure enough, this teacher gets blasted by admin, who state that test scores would have been higher if this teacher was truly connecting her lesson plans to social justice issues. The teacher is absolutely demoralized, but the story doesn't end yet. The other 5th grade teachers are veterans who know how the district works, and thus made sure to train hard on tested skills. Sure enough, these teachers' high test scores win them praise from admin for tackling the achievement gap and teaching with social justice in mind, which they never actually did because of test score demands. The final insult comes to the younger 5th grade teacher when admin asked the 2 veteran teachers to mentor her on implementing social justice issues into her class. The veteran teachers are very nice about it and explain that they used to do the same thing she did, but it's turned into a matter of survival. If you have low test scores, admin will come after you and force you to use specific interventions and collect even more data. Thus, like so many districts, teaching for social justice means not teaching about social justice issues at all. Admin hypocrisy is far more visible when it comes to behavior. Everything discussed in the last chapter is supposedly based on social justice, meaning keeping suspensions and office referral numbers down to create the illusion of progress, regardless of the effect it has on classes, students, and teachers. Admins see almost all behaviors as misunderstandings by the teacher that need to be corrected through bias training and adoption of district-approved Band-Aid strategies for behavior. Many of these behavior strategies aren't bad, they're just not meant to be miracle strategies that cure meltdowns and temper tantrums. Let's consider the call and response strategy, popular in many churches, which actively involves the whole class giving responses, rather than sitting quietly and having everyone take turns by raising their hand. It's a great strategy, but can be used many different ways, but it's not meant to erase severe mental health issues or special education needs. It's important to note that to admin, social justice means catering your entire class to the student with the biggest behavior issues. All routines, rules, and lessons should be built around pacifying the student. The rest of the class is essentially non-existent, yet admin will promote the falsehood that they want to meet all, meaning one, of the student's needs. Admin want to paint the picture that their district refuses to give up on any student, but the teachers know that admin have given up on almost all students except the most extreme behaviors. With admin's thinking, the more severe the behavior, the more misunderstood the student is. There's absolutely no accountability for student behavior, as every kid is a victim of their teacher and the classroom environment. Note that even the most basic understanding of social justice should conclude that a class cannot function when a student is having 5 meltdowns a day. But again, the worse the behavior, the more of a victim the student is, and the more training all teachers need. It's important to note that training for any job is vital, but so often it's impossible for teachers to take district workshops and training sessions seriously when the teacher ignores what is happening in the classroom and furthermore is used as a weapon to silence opposition. So many trainings are treated almost like Maoist struggle sessions, where teachers are encouraged to confess their prejudices and their failings in the classroom. Worse than just being ineffective, these training sessions can push teachers away from important education issues due to how they're presented and who is presenting. Considering everything discussed in this video, I want you to pretend you're a teacher. Now consider how serious you would take a district training session on social justice, knowing the district only cares about test scores and suspension rates. Even if the training session was good, you'd know full well the district is just using this as a justification for more teacher bashing. Teachers generally tend to be a more progressive group, but you can understand why so many teachers are sour towards district initiatives that claim to be rooted in social justice. They have nothing to do with social justice and do a huge amount of damage to the many teachers and educators who are truly trying to change the test score factory system. Consider, if I stepped on your toe every time you said social justice, regardless of what you thought about social justice, you'd quickly develop a negative reaction to the term. And so it is for us. I want to note something interesting about this chapter. The whole thing is about social justice misuse, yet there's very little about social justice issues and how they should look in class. I did this on purpose, not to disrespect so many of us educators who are serious about it as a movement, but to show that when equity and social justice are used like a temporary fad, they can easily be replaced by other terms or movements to promote the same teacher bashing and test score shaming. As a thought experiment, I'm going to wave a magical wand, and all of a sudden, the terms equity and social justice are replaced by freedom and liberty. The district now has training sessions on freedom and liberty, and expects these implemented in lesson plans. What changes? Absolutely nothing. The purpose is only to pump out test scores. Interestingly, as with social justice, any understanding of freedom should lead towards more classroom freedom. But sure enough, it's just a new term, but more of the same. The district could even adopt the terms puppies and sunshine as the new fads, and these terms would still be used to reinforce the existing system. In closing this chapter, my hope is that we can push aside tribal politics and understand how school districts can manipulate any movement or current terms in order to reinforce their existing policies that have done so much damage to teachers and students. In the next chapter, we'll discuss why it's often so easy for school boards, superintendents, and their fellow cronies to keep getting away with this. Chapter 4, the superintendent, the school board, and the unheard voices and stories. The focus on this chapter is how hard it can be for parents to get accurate information about what is actually happening in schools. As we move through this chapter, I want us to remember that the true nature and reality of schools are so often hidden within the day-to-day experiences of teachers and school staff. When these voices are silenced, or more often just have nowhere to speak, the truth becomes whatever picture admin want to paint for the parents. Before we move further, I want to acknowledge again the variance you'll find in school districts all over. It's not being trivial to say that 10 different districts will have 10 different superintendents and school boards. Each district has its own issues. Often, the school boards can fall in love with their chosen superintendent. Other times, it's a costly divorce that can drag on. Regardless of their relationship, what interests us here is how hard it can be to get rid of the superintendent, school board, or both when the reality of the district is hidden behind worthless district speeches and website updates. As a brief review, we can think of the superintendent as something like a district boss or the president of a company. The school board hire the superintendent and are essentially the only people in the district who can remove the superintendent. The school board members are voted in locally during elections and serve terms until they leave or lose a re-election. Both have endless responsibilities, which you can Google if you want. But what we're interested in for this video is what limited accountability there is for superintendents and the board when insider information about the district is so scarce. School districts have a lot in common with many corporations. We've talked about test score factories maximizing profits/scores, but the similarities go to the top. Whether corporation or district, when the board only cares about the data and gains, the president or superintendent don't have to care about the workers. Workers, teachers, and students become walking data points. As a master in the art of the sale, the superintendent convinces the board that focusing on the data proves that they care about improving schools. Parents are convinced too, which isn't surprising when it's the only opinion they heard. Two questions arise. Why would any parent vote against a school board member when district data represented is so positive? And how much could we expect any parent to possibly know about the inner workings and problems of the district? Let's consider these in a thought experiment. Think about the businesses around where you live. You may know the main ones, but there's plenty of businesses you've driven by hundreds of times and don't even know the company name. Now let's imagine the average local voter being asked to vote for board members for any of these companies. Chances are you wouldn't have a clue who to vote for, even if you knew the company and some of the employees. Even if you did some research and listened to some speeches by candidates, you'd have so little understanding of the company that you'd be better off asking an employee to tell you who to vote for. Now, to be clear, it's different when voting for school boards, as parents have their own school experiences to draw from, and they have experience from their own kids in the district. It's also very important that parents feel that they have a voice in the direction of the district, but this only works when you have multiple sources of information available. With a lack of any platform to voice concerns or protests, the teachers' voices are non-existent, so parents can only vote based on what they've heard and seen. The end result is that the school board elections are treated as uncontroversial. Remember, how could it be important or controversial when all district data either shows everything going so well or shows all the areas that the teachers are failing our kids, which justifies the tactics of the current board and superintendent even more. The disconnect so often seen between school board candidates and the realities teachers face every day is a direct result of teachers not having anywhere or way to share their experiences. This continues to be an impossible dilemma for teachers, as we're not allowed to share any personal information about students or incidents, which is understandable and also the law, but it's those exact experiences that gruelingly detail the harm and failure of district policies. Without our stories, we've got nothing. With the teachers' stories and concerns sidelined, school board elections focus more on budgets and mission statements, which, to be clear, are very important, but any sense of urgency for change is gone. The position isn't given the importance it deserves due to it being uncontroversial. Thus, the school board elections are viewed as shiny, happy candidates making budget promises. It's so uncontroversial that parents often vote based on whose lawn signs they've seen the most of. In my opinion, the most important responsibility for school board members is the one that is almost completely ignored: hiring the superintendent and holding them accountable. Remember that only the board can hire and fire a super. Doesn't matter if the whole district wants the superintendent gone. They're not going anywhere as long as the school board is happy. And thus begins the nightmare so many districts face. When teachers and staff want the super gone, the school board won't budge an inch, and parents have no information about what's happening in schools. Even if parents start to learn about how bad it's gotten in the district, the only real solution is to elect school board members that will hold the superintendent accountable, which can take years, as board members are up for election on different years. But remember, most voters aren't aware of the school board's connection and power over the superintendent. And why would they be, as it's such an uncontroversial role that it's hardly talked about? Convincing voters to elect new school board members is extremely difficult when the teachers' stories are muzzled. How can some parents convince potential voters about a problem when those most involved in the problem, the teachers, are out of the picture? Even more difficult is organizing a campaign, which will take years to accomplish with no guarantees of election victories. This is an uphill battle as superintendents and current board members control the image and perceived status of the district. What emerges from all this is a completely broken system. There's no reason that the school board should have the sole power in hiring and firing a superintendent. School staff need a direct role in voting to hire a superintendent, along with an even more important role to impeach a superintendent when the vast majority of staff members choose so. This doesn't need to look the same in every district, but staff members need a vote and an option to stop a superintendent and board members from holding a school hostage. It should be no surprise that the longer a superintendent and board members are in power, the more influence is extended, as superintendents continually hire loyal principals and staff who work directly under the super, opposition voices are weeded out, and an admin cult of cronies and puppets forms a buffer zone around the superintendent. You now have a posse of enforcer admin that are completely untouchable. Admin are essentially the noble class, while the rest of the staff are just peasants. And thus we've come back full circle to the district environment that allows for teacher bashing, test score shaming, and everything discussed up to this point, which sadly I can probably refer to as the usual. A quick note that even though teachers are reliant and in debt to our unions for any labor gains we've ever made, our local union can usually only help with contract issues, meaning as long as admin don't do anything technically illegal, we teachers are on our own as far as pushing for any sort of change from within. Unfortunately, it's not unusual for admin to get loyalists elected into the union, which effectively defangs them. I want to end this chapter by noting that there is an entire generation of brand new teachers who have known nothing but this current system of education. This is important, as many young teachers don't even know there's a problem, as this is all they've ever known. Of course we do room clearings. I remember doing them all the time when I was in school. Why wouldn't we do them? This normalization goes beyond their K-12 experience and extends directly into teacher programs in colleges all over. We'll examine this in our next chapter. Chapter 5, College Education Programs and the Normalization of the Usual. Folks, I promise I'm not making a joke when I refer to everything we've discussed in the video so far as the usual. The usual is a reality we teachers can't escape, not with training sessions or re-examining our state of mind. I should note, folks, that I'm neither an optimist nor a pessimist. I'm a realist. When people talk about the cup being half full or half empty, what does it matter if the cup has holes in it? If a system is broken, you're not being an optimist by ignoring the holes. You're just lying to yourself and others. The phrase, "the system is broken," is used to describe a lot of things. But what is a system and what makes it broken? Endless books have been written on this. We could talk about power structures, hierarchies, rules and routines, and endless other factors that make people feel like they don't have a say or a choice in changing any system. But at the end of the day, let's remember that a system is people making decisions. The great question is, who gets to make the decisions? Most people would group decision making with the freedom to have an actual choice. We'd naturally consider freedom a good thing. But if you think about it, having freedom to make career choices can be terrifying because we become responsible for the choices we make. Consider, every person watching this has the freedom to quit their job today. To be absolutely clear, I'm not saying it's an easy or good choice, as there would be huge consequences, but the fact that we have the freedom to make these decisions makes our situations all the more difficult when compared to not having a choice, in which case it's out of your hands so you don't have to think about it as much. To cope with how difficult our choices in life are, we often simplify things by convincing ourselves we don't have a choice, and thus evade responsibility for not pushing for change. I want to pause here and reassure everyone that this is not a whiny speech about blaming people for their situations and telling everyone to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Far from it. I want us to consider how many admin and academics will avoid pushing for actual change and just simply label whatever they're doing as change, thus avoiding responsibility by stating they don't have any choice either and are just following orders. We need to consider the funds of knowledge that teach academics, admin, and incoming teachers to normalize and promote the usual as somehow challenging oppressive systems. This bass-backwards reasoning has led to so many education programs and colleges all over focusing only on the failings of the teachers while turning a blind eye to our realities simply because teachers are easy targets. Many new teachers are practically brainwashed by their programs into thinking that they alone are the agents of change who will whip the other teachers into shape, only to quit their first year after they spent the whole year dealing with Johnny's temper tantrums. I want to pause to note that like everything in this video, there's going to be variance. 10 different education programs will have 10 different situations. Also, you line 10 professors up and ask them a question, you might get 10 different answers, maybe 20. I won't be giving you a book report on how these programs function and vary. Rather, I want to talk about how it is that so many teacher programs are so far removed from the day-to-day struggles of the average teacher. Let's start by considering who is teaching college-level courses. Yes, the obvious answer might be professors, but what's shocking is in universities all over, only about a third of those teaching are full-time professors who are tenured or on a tenured track. 50 years ago, almost all professors would have been on a tenured track, but the free market business model has meant universities are basically outsourcing jobs to grad school students and adjunct professors. This outsourcing has hurt many programs, but education programs often get it the worst compared to, say, science, math, engineering, or business programs. Though there are many grad school students who do an excellent job teaching with their pre-assembled curriculum, we need to consider that so many are in their mid-20s and have little or no actual teaching experience. This matters. Would you want a swim coach who's never swam? A hockey coach who can't skate? How about a basketball coach who can't show a proper layup? It's not being mean to ask for experience. But as a business model, this is very successful in saving money for other college majors that are considered more important. But the bigger picture is, you wouldn't expect most grad students to have a clue about the usual struggles teachers face. I myself am a PhD student, looking to start a dissertation soon. I can say without question that had I not continued to work full-time as a kindergarten teacher while working on my PhD, I wouldn't have made this video, or really ever had a clue about the usual. By the way, if you're looking to get ahead in academia, don't make a video like this. Now, let's consider the other form of outsourcing. Adjunct professors. It's a funny name that really just means bringing in people with real-world experience to teach a college class. Though it's an absolute joke what they are paid, the idea of bringing real-world experience into a college classroom is a good one. Now, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I remember having many adjunct professors in my education program. Only a few were teachers, the rest were principals and admin. One major downside to adjunct professors is an obvious one: time. Teachers and even admin work long hours that are often very stressful. Even teaching one college course a week as an adjunct would be so hard to fit in that you wouldn't be able to add much to the curriculum. I can say from experience that adjunct professors were often an easy A in the class, but it's what you don't learn that haunts you when you start teaching. Time and time again, teachers will say that classroom or behavior management was the #1 thing they didn't get enough training for in their college program. I agree, but there's something misleading about this. The onus is still all on the teacher's shoulders. Even veteran teachers are still mistakenly thinking that there are these one-size-fits-all strategies that will solve Johnny's meltdowns and every other problem under the sun. There's no class that teaches perfect behavior solutions. Perfect doesn't exist in education. Incoming teachers are walking into a disaster when they have been trained for 4 or more years to assume all behavior issues are some sort of simple misunderstanding, often due to the teacher's bias, and can be easily fixed by a hug and a courageous apology from the teacher, of course. More damaging is the fact that major behavior issues are so often completely ignored in college programs. This isn't surprising when everything is a misunderstanding. What behavior? There's only teacher errors. One thing that many programs do a better job at is challenging the test score culture of many districts. But these challenges are often toothless when we don't consider who's making the policies and which academics have research that justifies or contributes to these policies. Test score shaming doesn't appear out of thin air. It's a product of policies and the people behind those policies. You can't challenge a system without knowing who's in it and where the power lies. Without knowledge of the usual teacher struggles, incoming teachers become victims of a system that they often first experience during student teaching. From here, it's sink or swim, especially when they get their first job. Veteran teachers can help a new teacher with Johnny's meltdowns, but it's important to remember that many new teachers have years of training that they are supposed to be the agents of change that show these old and stubborn teachers how to bring down the achievement gap. They might not take the help. Though I'm not going to talk about the college classes admin take for their administrative licenses, it's interesting to consider that incoming teachers have the same blame the teacher training that admin get, which is somehow called leadership training. When you consider the alternative world that many admin live in, it doesn't take much imagination to figure out what leadership training looks like in admin classes. The true crime is this same style of training teaches incoming teachers to reinforce the same system that will make them quit later on. Thus, by ignoring the real issues of the classroom and focusing on what teachers are doing wrong, so many college teaching programs reinforce the impossible situation that so many teachers find themselves in. Ignoring the usual only reinforces the system, and it's an abusive system that allows admin to do whatever they want to the teachers. But there's also a small percentage of parents who have learned that they too can take advantage of teachers. These nightmare parents will be discussed in our next chapter. Chapter 6, The Nightmare Parent Who is Created by This Education System. No one should be surprised that there are parents who will take advantage of a system. Anyone who has worked in sales knows that you will get horrible customers here and there. What most parents aren't aware of is how much damage a nightmare parent can do to a school district. Nightmare parents learn how to work the system early on and will continue attacking every teacher their kid has from kindergarten to 12th grade. They know what threats to make and which admin to go to when they don't get their way. They almost always win and eventually get their way. Nightmare parents aren't born. They're created in an environment that offers them a scapegoat and no accountability for what they say or do to school staff. Folks, I'm not joking when I say that if I ever wanted to make a horror movie, I would just interview a bunch of teachers about their experiences with nightmare parents. The terrifying part is that they so often get away with bullying, threats, and frivolous lawsuits and continue doing this to every teacher. Folks, we're going to pause a second and talk about this term, nightmare parent. I don't have a perfect definition, but I want to stress that I'm using it to describe extreme examples where a parent goes after a teacher while being in complete denial of their own kid's behavior or just denial of the complications of a situation. If you've ever had a conflict with a teacher, that does not make you a nightmare parent. Parents should contact teachers if they feel it's something important, like say their kid is getting bullied. Teachers need to know these things. One of the most damaging aspects of nightmare parents is how much they affect teachers' relationships with the other parents. Nightmare parents leave psychological scars on teachers. Emotionally, the teacher not only has to cope with the pain and humiliation brought on them, but they're also aware that this can and will happen again and again, year after year. It's only a matter of time before another nightmare parent comes after you, and you never know who it's gonna be. It's not paranoia, but a reality we face every time we get a new class. To be clear, probably 98% of parents don't fit into this category. In my own experience as a teacher, I can say it's rare that I get a nightmare parent, but teachers all over can testify to what this parent can do to the class. When a nightmare parent is in denial about their kid's behavior, a perfect storm is created that can chase endless staff members away from education. The worse the student's behavior is, the more of a victim they are in the eyes of their nightmare parent, who will go all the way up to the superintendent whenever there are any consequences for their kid's behavior. When admin constantly cave into the demands of nightmare parents, often out of fear of a lawsuit, this makes it almost impossible for reasonable parents to address concerns they have, such as the endless cases of bullying that go on without any consequences. But there's something much bigger at stake here. Consider everything discussed in this video. If you're not furious by now, then either you're admin or you're watching this on mute. How do parents address these issues with an administration that only takes you serious if you carry big stick and make threats? Let's remember that so many admin are masters of the art of manufacturing consent. The consent from the parents comes as admins skillfully redirect parental frustrations at school staff, who are to blame simply because they can be blamed. Even if parents don't buy into these lies and deceit, admin won't move an inch unless there's a serious threat, usually some sort of legal action. No matter what, the teacher will bear the brunt of any change. Even if the parent is totally supportive of the teacher, it didn't want this to happen. I want to note something quick. We've talked about Johnny's meltdowns throughout this video, but I've only given a little attention to the other 99% of students. I want us to consider how impossible it is to bring up concerns about the rest of the students when admin cater all decisions towards appeasing Johnny's nightmare parents. A main goal I had for this video was to show that what is stressing out your kid's teacher is 100% affecting your kid too. When a teacher can't control Johnny, Johnny can bully your kid whenever he wants. Try stopping him. Thus, we've come around full swing to the Lord of the Flies scenario, seen in so many classrooms where the teacher has lost all control, and two students effectively do whatever they want. Kids are getting bullied so bad that they don't even want to come to school. Their parents desperately send emails and calls to the teacher, principal, admin, anyone they think can help. Everything is blamed on the teacher by admin. The best a parent can hope for is to transfer their kid to another class, but there's no guarantees the same thing won't happen again. Far from feeling bad about the damage that they and their kid have done, nightmare parents are often encouraged by admin to advocate for their kids' needs and challenge the system that's done them such harm. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. Interestingly, it's not uncommon for admin to encourage nightmare parents to share their strategies they use at home that work so well. This is referred to as expertise. It shouldn't be surprising that admin often develop real friendships with nightmare parents. And why not? They both go after the same scapegoat teachers. Strangely, there is one benefit to a close relationship between admin and nightmare parents. It can potentially prevent a damaging lawsuit. Parents don't sue for thousands. They sue for hundreds of thousands, if not millions. The sheer threat of a lawsuit is enough to make admin cave into almost any demand. To be clear, this is actually understandable as the lesser of two evils and is usually accompanied by more staff training in order to appease the parents. Crisis averted, except that now this nightmare parent thinks that they're an expert on education reform and sure enough is encouraged to force feed new ideas to the teachers. Can't wait to hear them. Folks, I can go on and on about the damage that nightmare parents do, but I'm sure you get the point. I want to briefly talk about how this affects the teacher's interactions with everyone else and maybe offer some advice. We teachers are a strong group. It goes with the profession. Considering everything in this chapter, I can assure you that parents don't need to be walking on eggshells with every email sent or conversation had with teachers. Like anyone else, teachers don't want to be accused of things. It's not rocket science to simply email concerns without instantly attacking Mrs. A or Mr. B, C, D, E, F, G. Considering everything in this video, what I ask is that parents show understanding for how hard our situations are. I often have parents who will end every email with something like, "We appreciate everything you do," or "My kid loves your class." It's things like this that can keep a teacher around to fight another year. And folks, on a personal note, I'm a fighter who won't be leaving this profession anytime soon, but I can't say the same for endless other teachers who are so sick and tired of their treatment and the lack of hope for any change happening in their district. Which brings us to our final chapter. Knowing all this, where do we go from here? Chapter 7, Planting Seeds of Change, the long-term struggle for the heart of education. I want to first thank everyone who's made it this far. I know it's a lot to get through, but I hope you enjoyed the narrative and the pictures. And above all, I hope you learned why your kids' teachers are so stressed out. The title of this chapter sums up nicely what I think change will look like. There is no one-size solution to the problems we are facing in education. Every district has its own issues, yet districts all over are being ripped apart by the issues discussed in this video. Change in any district will be a long-term struggle, where parents become more aware of issues as more teachers find ways of making their stories heard. As stated, the history of any district is not written down in admin speeches, but emerges through the daily experiences of teachers. As parents learn about what has been happening at their kids' school, they'll demand school board members who will hold the superintendent accountable. But none of this will happen without some sort of forum for parents to discuss what they've heard. Though social media has done a lot of damage, it is still very useful to form group chats and forums. This is still one of the easiest ways to connect parents to a forum that allows people to freely discuss district issues. To be clear, these forums can and will be trolled by admin and their cronies, but the benefits are far greater. Like reality, change is messy and complicated. Forums can be messy. You have to sort through a lot of info and stories, but over time, patterns emerge and a truth is uncovered. Above all, change is a long-term struggle. As mentioned, it can take years to vote in new school board members. With the superintendent and board effectively controlling the image of the district, it can be hard to convince other parents about what is happening behind the curtains, especially when teachers are scared of the repercussions if they speak out. Unfortunately, the worse the district, the more silent the teachers are. Fear is a powerful political tool. Admins set examples for all staff by playing musical chairs with disloyal principals. Our silence is taken as loyalty. Sadly, it's effective. It's important to remember that admin and the board don't necessarily have to prove that they're right in order to stay in power. It's more effective to convince voters that there are no problems, and thus it's less work for voters, as they can just keep the same people in power. The burden of proof is always on the opposition. This is especially true for empty nest parents whose kids graduated years ago. These parents have no current kids in the district and often vote based on how they remember the district used to be, while being completely unaware of what's happened. This isn't surprising. I mean, who is going to tell them? They don't call it a struggle because it's easy, and the uphill battle that is necessary to bring in a new district leadership is sure to be stressful. Stress can lead to hopelessness, which can cause anger. I bring this up to caution anyone watching this video to not turn this struggle into a purity test or inquisition. Shouting down a superintendent or board member at a meeting is not helping anyone. All it takes is one angry parent, and admin can rebrand any struggle as an out-of-control mob. All it takes is one. It's not fair, but honestly, is anything in this video fair? I stated in the title that this is a long-term struggle for the heart of education. But what is the heart of education? Really what I'm asking is, how should schools function? Teachers have rarely had a say in this because the school board and superintendent have always answered it in their district vision statement. But what if parents and teachers had a say? Would you still have room clearings? Would you have kindergartners pumping out nonsense words? I'd hope by now the answer is no. It's easy to list some of the obvious things to get rid of, but much more difficult to come to any sort of consensus on shared district values and a district vision that will unify and guide all schools and staff. Simply put, it's easier to criticize the crown than it is to wear it. Many parents, and especially teachers, are so used to not having a say that they actually believe that they shouldn't have a part in district level decisions because they're not qualified. I want to push back against this and show that everyone watching this is more qualified than you think. The heart of education is not a perfect system, but an idea about how schools function best for the staff and students. Teaching is not an exact science, but more like an art or craft that is constantly changing, evolving, and adapting. So too is our conception of how our schools and our district should function. Parents don't have to have teaching expertise to know that they want safe schools where teachers can actually do their jobs, and fun lessons that allow students to explore new ideas, not obsessively cramming for standardized tests. Parents and teachers are fully capable of implementing their own ideas. You don't need an admin license to have ideas, but unfortunately, the reality is that all district decisions come from the top. But here's a question. Why does everything have to come from the top? If you were superintendent, would you put the crown on and simply just be the next admin in complete control? This hints at the larger problem. It's not just about replacing the super and board with people you like. Power can corrupt anyone, but absolute power absolutely corrupts everyone. The heart of education doesn't need to look the same in every district, as it should be an extension of the shared values of the community. This only works when teachers and parents have a say. District change doesn't happen if you just want to elect a new board and admin to come up with a better district vision. It's still just a few people at the top making decisions for everyone. It's so important that any struggle for change be rooted in making our education system more inclusive, democratic, and responsive to the needs and ideas of the community. Endless admin will state that their district is already inclusive and responsive to the community. I don't need to waste time explaining why this isn't true, but let's consider how it looks to be inclusive and responsive. Is it inclusive or responsive to have a few people come up with a district vision that's set in stone? Nope. To be clear, you obviously wouldn't want thousands of voters competing for what's included in the district vision, nor would you want a vision that changes every week. But considering this video, I'd bet most parents would want some sort of language about how behavior is dealt with and how much weight is put on standardized tests. That's being inclusive and responsive. But folks, a more inclusive district vision means nothing without action. You'll find endless district visions with flowery language about behavior and testing. They're nothing but empty words that don't reflect the realities that the average teacher faces each day. Change is more than words on paper. A district cannot be inclusive if it's not transparent. Transparency is directly related to accountability. When admin aren't transparent, they need to be held accountable. And if accountability is impossible under the current system, then staff and parents should have an impeachment option that goes above the school board. Folks, these questions of what the district should look like are just as important as the action needed to create change. But it's so important to state that you don't have to have all the answers before you push for change. The issues discussed in this video don't require a perfect solution first. If something is truly wrong, then the first step is to take action to stop it. I want to stress my personal belief that solutions should not just vary among districts, but also for schools too. Schools need more autonomy. They shouldn't have to radio central command for approval with everything. As we consider how to create change in the district and what change can look like, my hope is that this chapter and the entire video have created a sense of urgency for why things cannot stay like this. I don't have the solutions for fixing every district, but I don't need to, because there is no one solution. My intentions were to show you the grim realities we teachers face so that parents can fight alongside teachers as we both advocate for what's truly best for the kids. I want to wrap up this chapter and this whole video with a request. Parents, please help us. We need your help. We need you to advocate for us and for your own kids, because nobody is listening to the teachers. Though there are districts with a superintendent and board that care about the staff, there are too many districts with teachers that live the nightmares in this video every single day. This can't continue. Considering everything in this video, are you surprised there's a teacher shortage? How do you recruit new and diverse teachers when they're treated so bad that they quit after a few years? Veteran teachers are leaving just as fast. It's understandable. Every year is a roll of the dice, and a veteran teacher has no more certainty or protection than a first-year teacher. We survive from year to year, but that's no way to live. We can't keep doing this. I'm not joking when I say that some of your kids' future teachers might be artificial intelligence programs, because nobody wants to do the job anymore. Teaching is supposed to be a lifelong career, not a 2-year stop on your way to corporate America. I truly wish we teachers could organize and fight this battle by ourselves, but I don't see it happening. Too many good teachers have left. We've been disrespected and ignored for so long that too many of us have lost the will to fight back. Simply put, parents, we can't do this without you. We need parents to amplify our teacher voices, because admin all over are not listening to us. It may seem like a lot, but is it so much to ask that parents stand up for the teachers who taught your kid how to read and write? For the longest time, For the longest time, we teachers have been overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated. There are endless parents watching this who are in the same boat, but it's the issues discussed in this video that have put us over the edge in terms of stress. Why are your kids' teachers so stressed? Well, for the same reason your kids are stressed about school. But now that you do know, what are you going to do to help change things? I'd start by forwarding this video to anyone you think will care about education. Then start talking to people. Spread the word. Plant seeds of change in minds and join us in the struggle for the heart of education. My name is Mr. B. Thank you for watching my video, and please forward it to anyone who cares.